You can get New Zealand residence the moment that you get the job. There's no 2-year wait, no points system, one application, one visa, and a real pathway to permanent residence. Now you can do so under the Green List Tier 1, and that's exactly what this video is going to be about. In this video, we're going to cover exactly who can apply for the straight to residence visa, which jobs qualify under the Green List Tier 1, what the wage and qualification requirements are, what documents you might need for this application, how to include your partner or children, and what the visa costs, how long it takes, and what happens after you get residence. So there's no speculation, no hype, no fancy edits, just official requirements strictly from the Immigration New Zealand website. So who am I and why should you listen? My name is Pat. I'm a fully licensed immigration advisor based here in Auckland, New Zealand. I run NZ Immigration Help Service, a family practice based in Auckland that's been operating for over 20 years. And throughout that time, we've been fortunate to help over 18,000 successful clients. My family went through the entire immigration process. My grandparents first made the move in the early 90s, and my mother and I followed after in the early 2000s. We went from temporary visas, and now we've been citizens I've been a citizen for more than 10 years, and I've been through the system myself. I've been a migrant through the system, and now I work inside as a licensed immigration advisor. That combination does shape everything about how I help people plan their pathways to New Zealand. So I work with clients who are interested in the Green List and submit applications on the Green List almost every week. This is one of the most common visa inquiries that I get. It's definitely a really good opportunity if you qualify. Again, straight to residence, you can technically arrive your very first day in New Zealand as a resident under this policy, and it's paved a lot of opportunity for people outside all around the world. So just to give you a bit of background, what is the straight to residence visa? So the STR, the straight to residence visa, is a residence visa, funny that, for people who have a job or job offer in one of New Zealand's most in-demand occupations. So these occupations are listed in Tier 1 of the Green List. Now, I will not be talking about the work to residence pathway, the Tier 2, which requires you to work in New Zealand for 2 years first, and then you can apply for the work to residence visa. This discussion will be all about the straight to residence policy. So this visa lets you work, live, and study in New Zealand indefinitely. You can include your family on this visa, and after holding it, you can apply for permanent residence straight after, which removes the travel conditions. So that's really the most common question we get. What's the difference between a resident visa and a permanent resident visa? Quite frankly, it's just the travel conditions attached to it. So this this video covers generalized information only. It does not substitute specific immigration advice relative to your situation. For any person watching this, it's merely to give you a glimpse, an understanding of the policy. When you apply, when it's time to apply for this kind of visa, it's important to get professional assistance. It doesn't have to be me. It could just be someone who is, of course, recognized by the Law Society in New Zealand, by Immigration Advisors Authority, or anyone else exempt from licensing. Those are the only people who can give you immigration advice, and I recommend you get some help for skilled residence applications. I don't usually say that for a lot of visas. You may find that other visas are pretty straightforward, but for this particular visa, it's always important to get some proper help. So the next stage is who can apply for this visa. So to apply for the straight to resident visa, you must meet all the following requirements. Number one, you must be aged 55 or younger when you apply. So in other words, the day you turn 56 is the day that you no longer meet the requirements for this visa. You must have an offer of or be working in a Green List Tier 1 job with an accredited employer. You must be in good health. You must be of good character. You must be able to speak and understand English. You must have a genuine relationship with your partner and dependent children if you plan to include them. And every one of these must be met. If you're missing a single requirement, your application may be declined. Now, your job is to meet the requirements of the Green List Tier 1. Now, the Green List is Immigration New Zealand's list of jobs that New Zealand needs people for. this isn't the only way to get residence. This is just one way under the green list to get residence. So these jobs are separated into two tiers. Again, as I said, we've got tier 1, straight to residence, and we've got tier 2, which is work to residence. Now, tier 2 jobs allow you to apply for the work to residence once you complete 2 years of skilled work experience in New Zealand. Now, to apply for the green list tier 1, the straight to residence, you need to be working for an accredited employer. You must be working in a tier 1 job on the green list. You must be paid at least the rate specified in your green list tier 1 job, or the current median wage, which is $35 an hour, 35 New Zealand dollars an hour, if there's no specific rate set alongside your occupation. It must also be full-time. It must be permanent or fixed term for at least 12 months from when you apply, or a contract or continuous contracts for at least 6 months. Now, you must also meet the specific green list requirements for that job. Now, the employer will have their own requirements, but Immigration New Zealand will also have a different set or an additional set of requirements as well. These can include having specific qualifications, professional registration or membership. It's important to search the green list on the Immigration New Zealand's website to find your job and see what's exactly required. Your employer, again, must be accredited with Immigration New Zealand. If they're not, you cannot use this visa pathway. You can check the employer accredited or accredited employer list on the Immigration New Zealand website. I'll also be including it in the link in the description below. So, how much do you need to earn under the straight to residence visa? So when you apply, you must be paid at least one of two situations. The first situation is if you are working in a green list job that has a specific pay rate, you need to be paid at or above that amount. If it does not have a specific pay rate, then you need to be paid at or above $35 an hour, which is the current median wage, which was effective from the 9th of March this year. Documents you can include to show what you earn include your employment agreement, perhaps your fixed term contract, your employment offer letter from an accredited employer. It must show your hours, duration of employment, position and pay, location of work, obviously your name, your address, your details, their name, the employer's name, their address, their details. All of the general employment law conditions need to also be included. One important thing to note as well is the median wage tends to increase over time. So it did so from $33.56 up to $35 per hour. Again, I said on the 9th of March, if your green list job does not specify a wage rate, this is the minimum you need to meet. So what if you're a contractor? So what if you get an offer of employment or offer of a job that isn't, that isn't a employment agreement? Then you would need to meet additional requirements. So it's important to check the green list to see if there's any extra requirements listed under that job. If your job has a wage threshold for contract for service employment, you need to provide evidence of the following. So contractor requirements are as follows. You need to have at least 10 years of relevant experience in that particular domain. You need to be paid at least the contract for services wage threshold for your job, and your contract or continuous contracts without breaks must add to at least 6 months. So that's the main condition if you are under a contract for services. Now, this does not apply if you have a full-term permanent contract, or sorry, full-term permanent employment. This only applies if you have a contract for services. Now, depending on whether or not you gained a qualification inside or outside New Zealand, you may need to get your qualification assessed by the the New Zealand Qualifications Authority, and that's conducted through an international qualifications assessment. Now, the IQA determines your qualification that you have gained outside New Zealand and translates that into a comparable level in New Zealand. So in other words, is your bachelor's, master's, whatever your qualification is that qualification the same level in New Zealand as it is outside New Zealand? So if you have a bachelor's, for example, is that bachelor's the same level as a bachelor's in New Zealand? So not all international qualifications need this IQA. If your qualification is not included in what is called the list of qualifications exempt from assessment, then you do need to get an IQA. And then the question is, what type of IQA do you need? So not all qualifications need an IQA. For example, qualifications recognized under the Washington Accord or Sydney Accord system do not need to be assessed. That really only relates to professions in engineering. If you do need an IQA, you must apply for it and include the results in your visa application. Make sure to allow enough time for this to process. It's really hard to gauge how long it takes. Some applications that I process for the IQA take 4 months, some take 4 days. It really depends on when you obtained your qualification. For instance, if you obtained it within a certain period, it may be longer, it may be sooner. So just allocate enough time. So it can take anywhere from several days to several months. It's important to check the green list requirements for your specific job to see whether an IQA is needed. Again, some jobs require registration or membership instead, or even in addition to a qualification assessment. So for the teachers out there who may be listening, Immigration New Zealand does have specific guidance on teaching roles on the green list tier 1. So the straight to residence pathway is primarily designed for experienced teachers with this context in mind, who are working at or are offered roles paid at the median wage. So it is not intended for newly graduates, teachers effectively who have just become teachers, or those early in their careers. You need to essentially consider whether or not you have experience as a teacher in order to apply. If you are a newly graduate teacher, you can still apply to live and work in New Zealand while you build experience, but immigration does suggest considering the post-study work visa or the accredited employer work visa instead to build on your experience. So in practice, this means teachers applying for the STR need to be on a pay step that meets the current median wage of $35 an hour. For many, this means being on step 5 of the teaching pay scale or above. So with that in mind, the other thing that you need is you need to meet health and character requirements. So you and anyone included in your application, your partner, your dependent children, if you have any, must be of acceptable standard of health. In other words, ASH. So everyone aged 15 or older must complete a chest x-ray and medical examination. And depending on whether or not you are in New Zealand already, you may be able to use your previous results from your previous application, but that is at the discretion of Immigration New Zealand themselves. So children aged 10 or younger need a medical exam, but generally do not need a chest x-ray. Children aged 11 to 14 need both a medical exam and x-ray, but only need a blood test if requested. So medical evidence must be less than 3 months old when INZ received it. There is an exception to this. Again, I said, if you've provided medical evidence from a previous application, you may be able to use that depending on when you apply. The next thing you need is you need to be of acceptable or good character. You and anyone in your application that's aged 17 or older must provide police certificates less than 6 months old. You need police certificates from every country you are a citizen of and every country where you have spent 12 months or more in the last 10 years, even if the 12 months was not consecutive. Let's say you go in the country, out the country. If it adds up to 12 months, you'll need to get a police certificate from there. Police certificates must cover your full criminal history, not just the last 10 years. So again, if you've provided your police certificates with a previous application, you may be able to use that, but that does depend on when you apply. If you have provided, so I've effectively covered this already. The next thing, if it wasn't your health or character, the next thing you need is is to meet English language requirements. So you, as the principal applicant, and for those who may not know what that means, the principal applicant is effectively the pilot of the ship. So let's picture a family. Let's say the principal applicant was the husband/father, or let's say the wife or the mother. They would be the principal applicant, and all other applicants on that visa would be called secondary applicants. So you, as the principal applicant, in other words, the pilot of the ship, must meet and speak and understand English. Now, there's 2 ways to demonstrate this. You can do so by your country of citizenship, the place that you did studies, perhaps your qualification, or you can take an acceptable English language test. Now, for your family, they still need to meet English, but if your partner and if your dependent child is younger than 16, then they do not have to demonstrate English. But if your partner and dependent children aged 16 or older are accompanying you on this visa, they need to be able to demonstrate their English ability. Though there is there's a much lower threshold for English for these guys. So principal applicants usually have to meet a higher level of English than the secondary applicants, the partner and the dependent children. Now, immigration at any point, by the way, may ask for additional proof of English ability during their process for both you and your family members. So always be prepared for this possibility. Now, including your partner and children on a residence application like this means that you can include them all in one application. This does not apply when you apply for a work visa, an accredited employer work visa, for example. If you want to bring your family, they need to apply for their own visas on the basis of yours. But for skilled residents, for the visa that we're talking about today, you can include your partner and dependent children aged 24 or younger in your application. You must be able to demonstrate that you are in a genuine relationship with them and you have documents to prove it. For example, a marriage certificate, birth certificates. But it's really important to understand that you need to provide evidence of your relationships. Providing just a marriage certificate is not evidence of your genuine and stable relationship. A marriage certificate alone is only a legal document. While it does suggest that you guys are in a relationship, a genuine and stable relationship, other evidence to go alongside that would support that application. So for instance, you may consider not only providing your marriage certificate, but you could also consider showing that you guys are financially interdependent. If you guys have joint bank accounts, joint bills, maybe perhaps joint ownership of particular assets, or even joint ventures. If you guys traveled places, if you guys purchased things together, all of those really add to your evidence portfolio for a partnership case, for example. Now, for demonstrating, your relationship to your children, birth certificates, it can also be photos, stuff like that. Now, one of the first important things to consider is if your partner or dependent children have already or are applying for a work, student, or visitor visa based on their relationship to you, you must include them in your residence application. Everyone included in your application must meet health and character requirements, as said. This means medical exams, x-rays, police certificates for your family members as well. So, what does it cost and how long does it take? So, the application fee for a straight to residence visa at the moment is from $6,450. The processing time for this particular application is completed, or 80% of these applications are completed within 5 months. There is going to be an outlier segment of that, and so perhaps it's safe to say that 80% of all of these submissions are processed within 5 months. The application method for this visa is online only. The exact fee may vary depending on your country of nationality. You can check the Immigration New Zealand website for fee details specific to your situation. If you're already in New Zealand and your current visa may expire while waiting for a decision, you should also apply for a temporary visa. If your current visa expires while your residence application is being processed, if your current visa expires, your current temporary visa expires, and your next temporary application is being processed, Immigration New Zealand may grant you what is called an interim visa. Now, an interim visa is at the discretion of Immigration New Zealand. It is not automatically granted, so it's really important to make sure you have suitable steps to stay lawfully in New Zealand. Now, the application process itself is you first gather your documents, make sure you've got your passport, make sure it's valid, photos, things like medical certificates, police certificates, English evidence if you need them, evidence of your employment, perhaps your skilled work experience, to show that you're suitably qualified for that particular job, IQA results if needed. Make sure you get certified English translations if any document is not in English, and make sure to allow enough time for medicals, police certificates, and IQA processing. So once you gather your documents, the next stage is to submit your application and pay the application fee. So you log into your INZ account or create one, fill in your application, upload all the documents, and pay the fee online. The next stage is usually the most daunting. It's to wait for the decision. So immigration, again, would take about 5 months for 80% of these applications to be decided. So you can check the application status in your online accounts throughout the time. Once approved, and if approved, you receive your e-visa. Now, this is obviously the most exciting part. All of the wait has led to this moment. If you've applied from outside New Zealand, you need to arrive within 12 months of the date your visa is issued. So you might be wondering now, well, what happens after you have residence? So your straight to residence visa lets you live, work, and study in New Zealand indefinitely. You can work for any job for any employer. You can study anywhere for any length of time. This is the moment you officially become a resident in New Zealand. Again, the only difference between this and a permanent resident is travel conditions. Now, when you get your residence for this particular visa, you can travel in and out of New Zealand as many times as you like, but your travel conditions expire 2 years from your first arrival as a resident, or from the date the visa was granted if you were already in New Zealand. After that, you need to either have a permanent resident visa or an extension of your travel conditions to re-enter New Zealand. If you're outside New Zealand, when your travel conditions expire, your visa expires as well. So this is a critical deadline to make sure that you track. Permanent residence, again, you can apply for this once you've held your straight to residence visa for 2 consecutive years. You can apply for PRV, permanent residence visa, and this removes the travel condition limit entirely. That is, quite frankly, the only difference between a resident visa and a permanent resident visa. Now, for most people, after 5 years of living in New Zealand as a resident, you may be able to apply for the New Zealand citizenship. This is effectively where you become a national, a citizen, obviously, of New Zealand. You do not need a permanent resident visa first. So that's just a few important things to consider after you have your straight to residence visa. So what documents do you need? For you as the principal applicant, you need to provide evidence of your identity. You need to have an acceptable visa photo, a passport style photo that meets the requirements of immigration. You need to have evidence of your health, your character, your English, evidence of meeting the green list tier 1 role, and any certified English translations for any non-English documents. So for your partner and dependent children, you need to obviously prove your relationship to them. Marriage certificates, birth certificates are perfect examples of this. They're not the only documents, but it's perfect ways to start. They need to provide proof of their identity and acceptable passport style photos, police certificates if they require it, health evidence if they require it, and English ability as well. So if they do not meet the English ability, they may be able to pay for English language lessons, which is a good fallback option. So to finish us off, common mistakes that I find all the time is that if there's any mistakes in your identity details, INZ may delay or decline your application or refuse entry into New Zealand. Expired documents are another. Things like medical evidence, they need to be less than 3 months at the time that you apply. And just remember, you may be able to use your previous ones, but that does depend on when you apply. The same goes with your police certificates. Just make sure you don't have any expired documents. The next risk is not checking whether your employer is accredited before applying. So this visa requires an accredited employer. The next is assuming your qualification is recognized without checking. So some overseas qualifications, again, need an IQA from NZQA, and that does take time. The next is forgetting to include your family members who hold visas based on their relationship to you. Now, immigration requires them to be included in your residence application. They simply need to be declared, included. If you don't do that, they may not be eligible to be included at a later stage. The last risk is letting your current visa expire while waiting for a decision. If you're already in New Zealand, apply for a temporary visa if your current one runs out. Now, it's really important to make sure that you time the timing effectively, or else you might find a period in your life where you are unlawful in New Zealand. So these are a few common mistakes or common risks that may delay or decline your application. Now, to finish us off, what you can do now is, number one, check the green list to see if your occupation may perhaps be on that list. Also check to see the specific requirements for the green list occupation that you are interested in, and make sure that you meet the requirements, the wage, the qualification, and registration requirements. The second is to check if your employer is already accredited. So it's good to check the Immigration New Zealand's accredited employer list on their website. Now, not all employers are going to be included in this database. Some employers may decide to withdraw their themselves in this database, but it gives you a good indication. It's a measurable indication as to whether or not the employer offering you the job is accredited, or better yet, you can ask them directly, are you accredited with Immigration New Zealand? The third is to start preparing your documents early. So it's usually best practice to prepare as soon as possible, almost for anything in life. But the medical exams, the police certificates, the IQAs, they all take time. So make sure that you allocate enough time for that. If you need an IQA, first find out if you need one, and then second, apply for it as soon as possible. And the last thing is to consider getting licensed immigration advice for your application. So this is exactly what we do in the strategic visa assessment. We help you confirm your specific situation, confirm your eligibility, perhaps on a visa like this or any other visa that you may be eligible for. But I do suggest getting professional assistance when it comes to applying for skilled residence specifically. It was good to explain everything. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below or get in touch with us directly, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.